will. Here,
Okay, it's live.
You have one of these, will you? Looks like it.
I will call the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting for Wednesday, April 14th to order. First matter on the agenda is the approval of minutes for the February 3rd, 2021 hearing. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
I second.
Any additions or corrections? All those in favor say aye.
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 The second matter on the agenda is a continuation of case number 2-03-21-02, Giovanni Pino Tomasello, requesting special exception for a conditional use to hold outdoor tented events. I want to put on the record that following our February 3rd meeting, the next day, I got a phone call from Mr. Tomasello. I have never represented him, and I don't represent him, but he and I have known each other for several years. And the conversation was he wanted to know what, if anything, he should do. I told him he should retain an attorney to address the issues that remain before the board, and that ended conversations. And Mr. Tomasello and I have not spoken since I visited the property yesterday afternoon in the presence of our planning director, Mr. Engelhardt. And if there was any discussion at that time which I felt inappropriate for me to be in the presence of, questions that were asked of Mr. Engelhardt, I excused myself. So again, in my judgment, none of those participations would affect my ability to consider the case on a fair basis. However, if the board members feel that I should step aside, I will do so.
No objection.
No objection, Joe. No objection.
Okay, thank you. All right, with that, I think perhaps it would be good, and I'm going to ask Mr. Engelhardt to bring us up to date, but at the termination of the last meeting, there was a motion to table the application, and it was made, as I recall, by Mr. Bunning, and it said the minutes reflect Mr. Bunning made the motion to table the application until Mr. Engelhardt could get back to the board about the number of guests, details for the parking, whether a site plan should be approved by the Planning Commission, and the maximum number of events that would be held. Mr. Apple seconded, and all members voted in favor to table the application until Mr. Engelhardt reviewed and spoke with the Planning Commission and schedules for another hearing. So, Mr. Engelhardt, perhaps it would be beneficial for you to advise the board whether you indeed reached out to the Planning Commission with regard to the matter.
Yes, sir. I spoke with Chris Kenny, the chairman of the Planning Commission, after the last meeting, and he felt it wasn't necessary for site plan approval because it's not a permanent structure, and it is a secondary use to the bed and breakfast use that's there. It wasn't establishing a new use, and there was no permanent construction. It was, a temporary on a special event basis. So he said he saw no need in bringing it to the Planning Commission.
So would you, for the folks in attendance, summarize our purpose in being here tonight?
Well, this is a continuation of the case from February 3rd. It has changed since that evening. At that time, they were looking for a possible expansion to the previous granted conditional use to have more diners inside, at any given time, besides the tenants in their bed and breakfast rooms, the overnight guests. They have dropped that. They are not trying to expand that conditional use that was granted in 2013. And the tented events that they are seeking now would be on a smaller scale, not up to 100, but 50 or 60, depending on what the model of the tent would accommodate. For an outdoor event, from again, a temporary event, one night at a time, throughout the year, but not on a regular basis, not every Saturday, not every Sunday. And to me, that's been some discussion we've had with people asking that question, which we'll get to in public comments. That could be something that the board places a conditional use on. If you want to make it 6 a year, 10 a year, 12 a year, I don't know. That would be up to the appellant for that.
I understand.
The fire marshal, we clarified that. That was another question we had at the previous meeting. For each event, they have, for each time the tent goes up, they have to get approval from the Worcester County Fire Marshal's office. And that's to see that they have proper egress, that if there is an accident or a fire, and people can clear the tables and get out into the open and be, into safety. Maximum number of events we just discussed. One of the other items that we discussed at that meeting was at what time would music, if there was music provided, what time that would stop. Again, I'll let the appellant talk about that. And the requirements, I understand they have an upcoming hearing with the Worcester County Liquor Licensing Board to allow for liquor, at the inn for these events. And that's all I have as far as an update from the last meeting.
Okay. Any members' questions of Mr. Engelhardt?
Yeah, I would like to get an understanding before we proceed to the tent issue. What has been approved? Is your understanding of what has been approved and how this property can be used
Okay.
prior to the tents?
The previous conditional use you're
And
referring to?
again, I know we have, it's a bed and breakfast with a maximum of 5 units, is that correct?
That's correct. Five guest rooms, two people per guest room, so 10 guests,
And
overnight guests.
10 overnight guests.
And that was the meeting of October 5th, 2011.
Right, so the bed and breakfast is not really an issue. We expanded upon that because they do have five units, and apparently that was more than the code allowed at the time. But the issue of the serving of food, restaurant, if you will, I hate to use that term right now. How many events or days was that allowed to occur in a month?
Okay, I'll read findings of fact from after that meeting of June 15, 2012, prepared by my predecessor, Chuck Ward, the planning director at the time. Let's see. Under conclusion, item 2, the Berlin Board of Appeals, based upon a motion by Vice Chairman Bunting, found that the bed and breakfast provisions as stated in 107-34 Section B could be modified for the subject property as follows. A resident manager or employee other than the owner may reside on the property. So that was one part of it. B, the subject property shall be allowed a total of 5 sleeping rooms for overnight guests. And C, breakfast, lunch, and dinner may be served. And D, dinner parties shall be permitted within the structure for attendees other than overnight guests, but at no time may the combination of overnight guests and dinner party invitees exceed 30 people. And then it goes on to say your motion clarified the above modification shall be granted pursuant to the following conditions. The owner of the property must execute an equivalent dwelling unit allocation agreement with the town. And B, the owner shall seek and confirm the town engineer's approval that a grease trap has been installed according to the town standards. And C, a parking plan must be submitted to and approved by the planning director as an addendum to the previously approved site plan for the subject property. I can tell you that A, B, and C, those three items have been satisfied.
Okay, I'd like to jump to, in the conclusion part, the D part. I want to ask you about when the testimony that was presented that night, prior to the motions being made, which I didn't make for approval, stated that the applicant wished to provide a dinner club service for offering 15 invited guests a few times per month. It was not my intent, I'm not calling that a restaurant. In other words, this was all to take place within the confines of the building, but again, it's not every day. Is what's being proposed now to be used as a restaurant on a daily basis? I mean, is this being expanded to be open every day for invited, not invited guests, but public guests for dinner?
That previous conditional use, that the conclusion, the motion I just read, doesn't say it can't be every day. Doesn't say it's limited to Friday night once a week or 5 times a month. It doesn't clarify that.
Even though the testimony leading up to
The minutes are one thing, the motion and the approval vote are another.
So the comments that were made later, and apparently our chairman at the time, Mr. Moore, was prophetic here. He made the statement that...
Wait a minute, is that prophetic or pathetic?
prophetic.
Thank you.
That, and again, I don't have any qualms with the bed and breakfast. Once initiated, it becomes a transformation of the property from residential to commercial. Well, this is still residential property. I see where you're going with your conclusion on that one sheet.
Not my conclusion.
But it wasn't a part of the...
I didn't compare it.
But I guess my point is, the use somehow has been expanded beyond my understanding of how it was to be used, and I'm concerned that continuing these expansions in a residential area might not be appropriate, but I mean, I just wanted to make that point, but we'll listen to the testimony.
Well, and that's a fair comment, and we'll let the applicant make their presentation. Let me say this, and I try as best I can not to talk like a lawyer, but Mr. Bunning, I would say that the applicant and the public have a right to rely on the official record, if you will, that was made with regard to the findings of fact. And I will be honest with you, I don't recall specifically, you have, I think, the review of the record. I don't. I did indeed say that I thought it was more appropriately a rezoning than a bed and breakfast issue. But I think we are bound respectfully by the findings of fact that were made and noted, because that's what the public can rely on.
Yeah, I understand that. I guess my only other point was, which is why I suggested at the last meeting that we're continuing now, that I felt like there should be some sort of comment from the Planning Commission because of the use of this building as a restaurant. Not so much the tent issue, but the restaurant on a daily basis, because a restaurant would require other requirements, like a parking plan, to demonstrate how the property would be used.
Understand.
But anyway, that's...
And parking was your concern that you expressed.
That's what I mentioned at the time.
And Dave, again, Are you satisfied that Mr. Denning, Chairman Denning, made his determination upon an adequate statement of what our problems were?
Yeah, an informed decision, yeah. And, you know, he said, well, if it's going to be from time to time and temporary, he said, no, we wouldn't need, it's not, he said, you're not rezoning the property, was his first question. I said, no, we're not rezoning the property.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't mean to cut anybody off. Any other comments? By the way, I do, the folks who are here, and there are people I think who may be listening in, we have, a couple of us have taken our masks off. We are socially separated up here. All of us except for Mr. Apple up here, who I put him way over in the corner by himself. I'm kidding.
You're calling me out. You're calling me
Have
out.
been vaccinated, so
Yeah, and as I
we
believe,
feel
we've all been vaccinated
comfortable.
twice.
Right. So, and we believe further that when we speak, it's best to take the mask off, and when I be quiet, I'll put it back on. So, okay. Any
So
other
you're not putting it back
matters of the board? Question of Mr. Engelhardt.
I have one, Dave.
Yeah.
The liquor license, would that be tied to the tented events as well? Is that needed for the tented events?
I believe so, but that would be a question for the
Okay.
applicant. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Oh, that's my knowledge, yes.
Okay.
All right. Everybody okay? All right. Mr. Cropper, I believe you're representing Mr.
sir, thank you.
Tomasello this evening. Would you come forward?
We'll put you, we'll social distance a little ourselves.
And before, madam, before you get comfortable, I need to have you sworn in, please. If you'll raise your right hand. You do solemnly declare and affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth.
I do.
And state your name and address if you will.
Maya Tomasello, 15 Harrison Avenue, Berlin, Maryland, 21811.
And again, it's up to you, Mr. Cropper, but I would prefer to listen to the testimony unmasked, if that's okay. Because I think we would then be better able to hear. Is that okay with everybody?
Do you mind
Yeah.
do you mind removing your
No,
mask?
that's fine.
Yeah, that's
Me-
fine.
and me
Yes,
as well?
sir.
Okay,
Help yourself.
Thank
And
you.
will you identify yourself for the record?
I will. Good evening, everybody. For the record, my name is Hugh Cropper, and I represent Pino and Karen Tomasello, who are seated in the audience, who are the property owners. I also represent Maya and Marco Tomasello. Marco is their son. The younger Tomasellos lease this property from their mom and dad, and they live in it as their permanent residence. Hence, that was Maya's address that she gave. We're here tonight, as Mr. Engelhardt pointed out, for a conditional use for outdoor tented events. I think I have to say to Mr. Bunning that I'm not prepared to argue about the interpretation of the old files, although I have them, and we've certainly relied on them, but we're not going to argue that. We're here to limit our testimony and our presentation to the outdoor tented events. I'd also like to say, Mr. Engelhardt and I think we're old school and we call everything liquor, but we're not, our application to the Board of License Commissioners next week is not for liquor, it's for beer and wine only. And we believe that we believe the nature of this use does require a beer and wine license, which is why we are seeking that. So no liquor, vodka, bourbon, and that sort of thing, but simply a beer and wine license. There was a lot of discussion last time in the minutes about having 70 enclosed seats to qualify for a Class B license, and that's, we've not applied for that, we're not seeking that, and again, that's not what we're here about tonight. Maya, again, please give us your name for the record.
Sure. Maya Tomasello.
Okay. And now that you're testifying, you and your husband, Marco, rent this property from your in-laws?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
And you and Marco reside on this property full-time?
Yes.
And you have no immediate plans to move?
No.
Okay. And you are requesting outdoor tented events either in the front of the property or in the rear?
Yes.
Okay. And was what I stated previously correct, that you're seeking a beer and wine license only from the Worcester County Board of License Commissioners?
That's right.
Okay, no hard liquor?
No hard liquor.
Okay. Now, you and I, with your parents, worked to come up, and we'll mark this as an exhibit. Let's see, I should have kept my mask. And I'd like to mark this as an exhibit, I may, and these are proposed conditions of approval. Who would like to be in charge of the exhibits?
And Mr. Copper, just so you know, Mr. Engelhardt has given each of the board members that.
Great, so that'll save me from circulating. I emailed it to him this afternoon.
Yeah.
So these are conditions that you would voluntarily put on any approval issued by this board, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. The first is that the tents would be installed by Coastal Tents or some other reputable company. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so we would be using Coastal Tented Events or another reputable tent rental company to provide the tent services for any outdoor event.
Okay, and they have a smaller tent that accommodates 50 or 60 people?
Correct. There is one that is 40 feet, and I believe it is a sailcloth tent.
And these are the same folks that do the various fundraisers and weddings around the county, the hospital, AGH
Oh, yeah,
celebration?
they're all over.
Okay. And a reduction from your last, from the last hearing, the outdoor events would not exceed 60 persons per event, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And not really part of this, not part of this hearing, but I think it deserved explanation, that the indoor capacity will still remain at 30 persons, but we will not exceed 60 persons cumulatively, which means if you have an outdoor event, you won't be serving inside.
Correct.
So if you have 60 people and you're probably not going to have 60, but if you do have 60 people at a special event, you won't also have people inside.
Right.
And if some of the people come for an intimate wedding and stay at the bed and breakfast, say 10 people stay in the rooms, they'll count towards the 60 people.
Right.
So if you come to that property and line everybody up, we're never going to have more than 60
Yes.
guests, no matter how you count it. Any entertainment that you would have would be non-amplified, which means they don't have speakers. They just sing by the voice of their mouth.
Right.
Acoustic.
What's that?
Acoustic.
Exactly. And that would end by 9 p.m. during any given event.
Right.
And we will proffer to this board that we will offer that same restriction to the liquor board when we go next week, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did you have this last time you were here?
Yeah, I believe we did.
Okay, well, we're going to mark it as an exhibit this time, just to be sure. Now, you have as an agreement with Worcester County that's been signed by Commissioner President Matresic and witnessed by Harold Higgins, the Chief Administrative Officer, that allows you, okay, we'll mark that as an exhibit. This allows you to park 40 vehicles. Here,
Yeah, just give it to Woody and he can pass it down.
That'll be great. You don't want to see me lunge across there.
Yeah, right. Here, John, you got one.
Yep.
There you go.
This allows you with notice to Worcester County and during certain hours and subject to certain conditions contained in this license agreement to use 40 parking spaces at the Worcester County Library.
That's correct.
And your property is, for the record, adjacent to the Worcester County Library, so people can easily walk back and forth.
Oh, yeah.
And in addition, you have, since you purchased the property, you've improved the on-site parking, which Mr. Engelhardt has examined in your presence and determined to have 21 parking spaces.
That's correct.
So there's 21 parking spaces on-site plus the opportunity for the 40 spaces in the outdoor tented special events.
Right.
Okay. You've also asked the folks from Coastal Tents to prepare I would really call it a site plan, but a diagram as to what the tent could look like. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And while I'm passing these out, we'll mark this as an exhibit and offer it into the record as well.
You can just have all three.
Oh, great. Oh, you got it. Okay.
Yeah, Carolyn, I think this is already in our packet.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, they had this, Mr. Cropper, at the February meeting, and we reproduced it for them for this meeting.
All right, well, we'll
That's fine.
offer that as an exhibit. Now, you're not going to have two tents at once. This is a either-or
Right,
situation.
either or.
Okay. And Coastal's been around a long time, and they do many events, and they're very expert in setting these things up
Oh, yeah,
and getting the proper approvals, like from the fire marshal's office.
yes.
Now, tell us about the outdoor operation and what type of events that you would propose.
So we're proposing to have outdoor, intimate, private events that could include a wedding or a family celebration centered around a birthday or an anniversary. We're also, interested in having holiday celebrations, but primarily we'd like to have weddings as the thing that we're looking most forward to.
Okay. And tell me, you've recently developed a website to advertise your proposed business?
That's right.
And tell me a little bit about your website.
So our website, I built it on Squarespace, that's the hosting platform, and it basically outlines, FAQs about the property and about what guests can expect when they're staying at the bed and breakfast. It outlines, the kind of events that we would like to be able to hold. It outlines ways to book, so for overnight guests to book their overnight stays. We have a history section that I spent a lot of time researching and, doing a little Berlin detective work.
This structure does go back to the late 1700s.
Right, and
Okay.
there's so much interesting history tied to the property. The website is pretty in-depth just because I think that people, like to read and like to learn about our property and what we, see as beneficial to the community, and, yeah.
So I'm not sure it's entirely relevant to tonight, but I read the website without any prompting from you. And it is advertising a bed and breakfast.
Correct.
Yeah, an intimate setting bed and breakfast.
That's right.
Yeah. And since your in-laws have purchased the property and you live there, have you done any renovations or upgrades?
We have. We have done, quite a bit to make the property more beautiful and, more aesthetically pleasing, and also just more functional. In terms of the outdoor space, the deck that was attached to the dining area, straight off the dining room, there was this wooden deck that needed to be replaced, and we expanded upon that to make it larger and more inviting, and also changing out the wood for AZEK, that brand, so it's just more durable and will last longer. We also had a brick patio placed underneath that, just to add more outdoor, relaxation space and gathering space. Landscaping, we had to do a lot of work to clear out the interior of the property because it did come with everything included inside from the previous owners. So that was quite a bit of, probably like 2 months of my life, going through all of those items and selling things, donating things, getting rid of things that couldn't be salvaged. But we did hold on to some of the really beautiful antique items that they had originally purchased.
So let me show you a couple pictures that you took recently, and we'll mark this as an exhibit.
You can do the same thing if you want to, just give the wording.
I like keeping an eye on Mr. Applebetter on the end.
Put these in my pocket and walk out.
I learned that from you, Mr. Moore. We handed out the exhibits, you can check
Sure,
out.
I check everybody.
Yeah, you check out their notes. You guys are a
That's
little,
off the record, by the way.
you're a little protected, you're a little protected up here. I'll take it better still don't stoop. So we've marked as the next exhibit, we're probably up to number 4. This is a picture taken from the structure, is that right?
That's right.
And we see sort of the fixed up parking area, the pervious oyster shells,
Oh, yeah.
the landscape, and then in the background, we see the parking area, which is, could you identify for the board?
The parking area is all of that clamshell that you see in this photo.
Right, but in the back, we see paved parking.
Oh,
which
correct,
is-
that's the library.
Okay, and that's, so in a special event, that shows the proximity of the park.
Yes.
Okay. We'll do just a couple more. This is, we're swinging around at a little different angle, looking how you've cleared out the trees in the rear, and again, maintained the landscape.
Right.
And I think finally we have one. We have the other side, so in case we'll offer this as an exhibit as well. We don't want to leave anybody else, so this is if you come around the other way. And again, this shows the extent that you've gone to clean up the landscape, mulch, plantings,
Yeah, it's
Oyster-
looking beautiful now.
oyster shells throughout. So to sum up your testimony, you live there full-time, you have no immediate plans on moving.
That's correct.
As a full-time resident, and you will be the person, you and your, sometimes your in-laws, but you will be there at all these events.
That's right.
Anything happens, you're going to be there.
That's right.
As a full-time resident and the contact person who will be there all the time, will you ensure compliance with any noise ordinance in the town of Berlin?
I will.
Will you ensure compliance with any conditions placed by this board
I will.
or the liquor board as may be applicable?
Yes.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to add?
No?
You hope they grant your
Yeah.
additional use?
Thank you guys for, hearing us out again, and we do hope to, hold these events and enrich the community, and, hopefully we want to bring people to the town to, develop the economy and continue to see its growth.
Okay. So that'd be our presentation, Mr. Moore. Thank you.
Are there any questions from board members?
Yeah, great presentation, by the way,
Thank you.
and the pictures and all. The question about the pictures, referencing the site plan map as well. The rear event space listed on the site plan shows the event space in front of the trees towards the end.
Yes.
And the picture you presented to us of the parking has the parking area going almost up to the trees.
Well, there's actually, the parking space where those clamshells end.
Yes.
There's quite a, a little, a graded slope that leads down to that green space that's in front of the tree line, which I would say guesstimating, probably like 50 feet or more, just off the top of my head,
Okay.
Walking the space. There's probably about 50 feet between that slope and the tree line.
Would you be placing the tent on that grassy area between the parking area and the trees, or behind the trees?
No, we can't, behind the trees is town-owned property. So our property, or my in-laws' property ends at the tree line.
Okay.
The tent would be situated vertically on that space, right in front of, we have like a little shed. So it would be, centered more so in front of that shed going vertically down the green space, if that makes sense.
You think you can fit a small tent behind the parking area?
Yes,
Okay. Or alternatively in the front yard?
yes.
When you have these special events, I don't know if this is what Mr. Apple's getting at, will you not cover the parking with the tent so people will have full parking?
Oh, of course.
Okay.
And it would be on the inside of the trees?
Right on our side of the
Right.
trees.
Okay.
And I'll just add for the record, the property she's referring to behind the trees is not town property, it's Worcester County property,
I'm
part of the library property.
And John, by way of further explanation, because I looked at this too, and respectfully, Mr. Cropper, if you took the, if you took the picture, it does appear that the trees are very close to the parking area. Dave, when you and I were there last night, the elevation goes down substantially.
Yeah.
And this is it's a
It's a drop pool.
yeah, it's an illusion because there is a lot more space.
Yeah, I just double checked it on Google Earth that there is more space than you were correct.
Sorry
This is-
for my photography skills.
But I see what you, I mean, looking at the picture, I understand where you're coming from. Yeah?
May I answer that question?
You can, but I think we're good, Pino. I
Yeah.
mean, they can fit it.
It's 100 by 200
Okay.
request property.
Okay.
Any other questions of the applicant's witness?
I have one. You testified you have 21 parking spaces on site. Do you have any kind of drawing demonstrating the 21 spaces and how you access them? And
We do not, that was counted by
Yes.
that was Mr. Engelhardt who counted the 21 spaces.
Across the back, they have 15 delineated with the concrete bumpers. And then I took a measuring wheel like you would measure property lines when I was there.
Yeah.
And before you get to the circle part of the driveway, so if you look at Exhibit 4, I came from the corner another 20 feet, just in dead space, and then measured another, whatever the distance was, up, and it gave me 6 more parking spaces. When I was there with Chairman Moore, Ms. Tomasello, and Mr. Tomasello last night, and Mrs. Cropper was there too. So I said, yeah, let's call it a minimum of 21. I think you could get more than that if you had, that many, you could have that many cars. But that's just on the shell driveway, the shell portion. And it doesn't come down as far as Exhibit 6, it doesn't get this close. And so that could still be an area for, I don't know if they're getting a delivery when they're setting up one of these events, that would be clear, that didn't interfere with the circle at all. Or if staff was there at 10 o'clock for a 2 o'clock event, they would not be in the way of people arriving to park.
so you're comfortable that the spaces you're counting will allow the parking of vehicles without having to move vehicles to get others out?
Yes. Because even up against the building, like if you look at where this silver vehicle is, and there's 5 spaces there, and when we were there were 4 cars parked there, and there was still room, and that's up against the building, and it's quite a distance from the building to the cars that would be parked head-in facing those trees we were just talking about, and that's where all those concrete bumpers are. So, yeah, I kind of went conservative on it. I said you could squeeze more on here if we did more, but I think 21 was an accurate number, yeah.
Did you answer, or did you state how many events you were proposing
We did not.
to have? Do you know? How many you're planning, a month?
Well, I haven't gotten any requests yet for events, so I really don't have a number in mind.
I notice in your agreement with the, well, that really doesn't apply, your agreement with the county, you have to give them 3 weeks' notice anyway.
That's
But,
correct.
I mean, is it something potentially you would do every week?
You know, it really
How many
depends on,
months a year?
it really depends on the interest that we receive in holding the events. Like I said, as of now, I have not received any interest yet, so I really don't have, you know, a number in mind or an idea of a number.
At the last presentation, there was, I thought, a letter from the neighbor, the most closest neighbor to this property is Mr. Hill. Have you had discussions with him as to how it will affect him, or?
In the interactions that my husband and I have had with Mr. Hill and his wife, we have not discussed anything of that nature, just more so talking about our dogs and talking about the landscaping and just general chit chat.
Okay, regarding the use of the building as, and again, I hate to use the term restaurant, is it your intent to use it as a restaurant?
It's our intent to be able to serve breakfast, lunch, and dinner per the previous exception, special exception. That was, what, from 2012?
So it'll be breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the general public, not just tenants that stay at your, at the inn?
Whatever we're allowed to do, we want to be able to do, but we don't have any plans as of this moment to do breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
You don't have any plans other than to do that?
Right. As of now, I'm not planning to serve breakfast, lunch, and dinner to the general public. But because of the special exception that we had previously, you know, the property has, we would like to continue to be able to do that and reevaluate, you know, our availability and our offerings at a later date.
Okay. I have no-
Any other questions for board members?
I just had the one about, you mainly answered it. You do have the website.
Yes.
You have social media, I'm guessing,
Yes.
and whatnot. Feedback from possible clients, has it been great? Are you forecasting a large clientele, so on and so forth? You're saying that nobody has reached out requesting a date as of yet?
For events, correct. We have had requests for overnight bookings for guests of the bed and breakfast.
Okay.
And the positive, you know, the social media feedback has been, you know, overwhelmingly positive, and especially from locals in Berlin.
In terms of supporting what you're doing,
Correct. Thank you for clarifying that.
not booking weddings.
Right, yeah.
I have a question for Mr. Engelhardt. Just what is the town's noise ordinance?
It's repetitive noise, and it's between the hours of, it can't be any noise before 7 a.m. and after 8 p.m. And it's not defined as a certain decibel level, like some places, but it's anything that could be defined as a nuisance, and that is enforced by the Berlin Police Department. I have gotten noise complaints in my office from time to time. Usually it's for construction related, not necessarily for, we did have one time where the rock band was practicing at night in the garage of a neighbor, and the neighbor complained to me.
Very vociferously, as I recall.
Yeah.
It was Christine Rain on Fountain Avenue.
Oh, I wasn't gonna go that far, but.
I'm sorry, but
That's okay.
she had right to say
That's
that.
okay, that's right. And we, you know, with the police department, in conjunction with them, we got that, you know, enforced to end. So it's usually, you know, on a complaint-driven basis. But in this case, with non-amplified music, you know, in other words, you might have a duo, or you might have I guess if it was really highbrow, you might have a string quartet there. I didn't see it as an issue with with most of the surrounding areas, like where Mr. Apple lives, or Brittany Lane. So, yeah, it's reported to the police department.
Are you going to go over the questions?
For the record, Dave and I discussed it, and what I think is appropriate, let me say for the record, while I think I know everybody in the audience, is there anyone present who wishes to speak for or against this application? Okay. And John, what Dave and I discussed this, I think it is appropriate that what we have, Mr. Cropper, we have questions that were posed to Mr. Englehart's office today, and they were posed prior to 12 o'clock, which 12 o'clock noon, which allows him to provide these to the board for consideration, question, and answer. I thought it more appropriate that I would simply read the question and David would answer the questions if he can. And Mr. Cropper, I will invite you, if you want to make a note after Mr. Engelhardt finishes, if you have any responses, you're welcome to give them as well.
Will people be speaking via Facebook or
Yes.
Zoom or?
Yes.
Oh, well then, should I do, I thought I
So
would do this.
I would just, I don't want to object because I want the public to have every opportunity to
Right.
speak, but I don't want to read all the questions and have somebody ask all the same questions again. I'd rather give a live testimony, I think you would do.
Well, and what I was trying to do was avoid that because there may be a lot of people that have the same questions that we would read twice, but.
So I would agree with that. I would agree these were received, of course, first. So we would read them, and then
And-
they are coming in on Facebook Live.
Right.
Some comments, and there may be questions.
That was my goal, Hugh.
Okay.
That's the public comment.
Yeah, because we have several we have, I think, 3 or 4 pages, 3 pages of questions. There may be folks who would have those questions, but if they're answered, then they don't need to do it. Is that all right with you? You've objected.
Yes, sir, no, that's fine.
Okay.
But the reason I asked was I didn't see any names necessarily on the question sheet, but while you were still under oath, your father-in-law had reached out, and I brought different concerns that I had gotten, two of which to his attention, and I just wanted to see if you had a chance to speak to those 2 complainants about their concerns.
Were they from the previous hearing?
Yes,
Were they presented at the previous hearing?
one of them had spoke during the previous hearing, yes.
Okay, because I was listening to the previous hearing. I was watching on Facebook Live.
Okay. So the 2 complainants that I spoke with your father-in-law, have you've been able to contact them directly?
Who are which complainants?
Joe
Are you
Hill.
allowed to say-
name.
Oh, Joe Hill?
Yes.
Again, we're neighbors, so we do speak regularly, but like I said before, it's mostly, how's
Okay.
Simon doing? That's his dog, or, just chit chat.
And he's the only one?
As far as I can remember,
Okay.
yeah, I think so.
If I might, one of the other people that did speak at the last hearing was, I believe, Malia Ricks.
Yeah, I have a comment. I have questions from her, too, that you don't have. So.
Right. And I was going to ask, before I read the questions, whether you would identify from whom the questions came, Dave.
Yes.
Right. Everybody okay with proceeding that way? All right. You have provided us, Mr. Engelhardt, with the written questions. And the first one, of course, starts with how many members have walked the property, but would you identify the person who sent those questions?
Mr. Joe Hill, who is the adjoining property owner.
Okay. And I can state for the record that Mr. Engelhardt reached out, as I recall, by email to the board members and suggested that we may want to visit the property to do what is characterized as a view. I said I thought that was a great idea and that we should all get together and do that so that we would have that together. Mr. Engelhardt reminded me that that would run afoul of the Open Meetings Act because we would be a quorum. So therefore, I acceded to his legal knowledge and said that we could appear separately. I will state for the record, I went there that yesterday afternoon, as I said before, with Mr. Engelhardt and viewed the property. But did anybody else go?
I haven't recently, but I've surveyed all of these properties, I'm very familiar with it.
Right.
I haven't recently, but I've been on the property.
Right.
Yeah, I knew the property pretty well in and out from different business deals.
Sure. Okay. So that answers that. The next one, the original approval was for a bed and breakfast, and then at a separate meeting, there was a request for dinner club once a month for 30 people. This can be verified by me, Joe Hill, Woody Bunning, and Chuck Ward, the planning and zoning official at that time. Dave, you, of course, read the findings of fact, but do you want to answer Mr. Hill's question on that?
I'm sorry, repeat that. I'm just looking at this.
I'm sorry.
Did I want to? I'm
It's going to be
sorry.
a long night if we
The
go.
the second question,
The original approval was for a bed and breakfast, that question?
and then a separate meeting, there was a request for a dinner club once a month for 30 people. This can be verified by me, Joe Hill, Woody Bunning, and Chuck Ward. Is that what your record reflects?
No.
Okay, would you
That's what
explain
we
the
discussed
difference?
earlier with the findings of fact from that meeting.
Okay.
Could I make a statement?
Sure.
I mean, technically what Joe is stating here was correct. It was in the minutes, but it's not in that final opinion or statement of fact. Is that correct? It was in the minutes that it would be basically once a month for 30 people, invited guests, even though that wasn't stated specifically that way in the...
That's correct.
Okay.
You are correct.
Yep.
Okay. The next question is, there is an assumption that the bed and breakfast is approved for 30 inside seating. What exactly does this mean? Is there no outside seating allowed?
Never a provision for outside seating, for serving outside.
His third question, again, there is the assumption that there has been approval for 30 people inside seating plus a bed and breakfast guest. Assuming there are 10 rooms, at most likely 2 people per room, this would be 20 plus 30. Now we are at 50 people. Mr. Cropper, I believe you have responded to that in your indoor capacity to remain at 30 persons, if I'm understanding the question correctly.
Yeah, that assumption's incorrect. As we saw earlier in the findings of fact, it was for 20 additional people and 10 room guests, 5 rooms times 2 people. So the total would be 30, not 50.
Okay.
There are not 10 guest rooms, there are 5 guest rooms. Times 2 is 10 people, and 20 was the motion additional to the room guests. So no more at any time than 30 people.
Okay. And Mr. Cropper, I'll invite you to weigh in. I'm not going to ask you to respond to everything, but I know that you will do so if you choose to.
Mr. Engelhardt was accurate, 5 rooms.
Next question, who is responsible for monitoring, parentheses, policing any violations?
My department, planning department, and the Berlin Police Department.
Next question is Berlin willing to hire a weekend zoning official?
No plans for that at this time.
Next question, what are the repercussions for violations?
Citations are issued if there are violations. They carry monetary penalties.
Next question is there a written zoning approval for a full-time restaurant? Has that been clarified? I had thought that it had, but,
There is none for a full-time restaurant.
okay. Next question, it was originally thought that there is no public comments or questions. All questions have to be submitted by email by 12 p.m. the day of the meeting. Is no public comment actually allowed?
We are taking public comment as we speak on Facebook Live, the town's Facebook Live page.
The next question, the applicant is requesting to host weddings or special events. I was told by the applicant that there will be no music past 8 p.m. And Mr. Cropper, perhaps that would be best for you or your witness to answer.
Maya, have you ever told
requested it.
anybody there's going to be no music past 8 p.m.?
I have not.
Okay. Yeah, we've never, to our knowledge, we've never represented that.
And in your presentation, you asked non-amplified music to end at 9 p.m., not 8 p.m.
Correct.
Next statement, there would only be 2 to 3 events per year.
We disagree with that.
Okay. Next statement, the maximum amount of people would be 50.
I feel like you've answered that.
Okay. Next question, will these restrictions be conditional upon approval for the special events? And I'm presuming that the restrictions that he is referring to would be restrictions that the board puts on the request before us tonight, if any. So I think that's a determination for the board. And then the next, so is this saying that there would only be a maximum of 50 people, or does this mean 50 people for the event, 30 restaurant guests, and 20 B&B guests, for a total of 100 patrons plus staff? And I think that you have answered that, stating that the cumulative use of the property would not exceed 60 persons.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then, Mr. Engelhardt, I don't recognize who is DIDI?
I understand that's Mrs. Hill.
Oh, okay. So, are the next questions, do we presume, are coming from her?
Yes.
Okay. To me, since there is no noise ordinance, how will we be able to keep the noise music from ring to loud tell on our neighbor? I think that's been answered. We do have
And it
a
needs to
noise.
be reported usually to the Berlin Police Department.
And again, I read these questions simply to make sure that no one thinks that we're ignoring them. But again, because there is no noise ordinance, how can anyone be in or out of compliance? And I think that's been answered. When an outdoor wedding event happening within 30 yards of my property, whose responsibility is it to tell the band to shut down when too loud? You want to answer that?
Mrs. Tomasello's responsibility.
Yes. Next, with an indoor seating capacity for the public is set at 30, and then you add the 20 people staying at the Berlin Inn, doesn't that bring up the number to an acceptable limit of 50? I believe that the record is clear. Next question, and if there's any quarrel, correct me, but unless I hear other, I'll presume that I'm making the statement that the record is clear on that. Is the 30 capacity dining for inside only, or will people be seated and drinking outside on the deck? Is the outside seating considered additional capacity? David?
It is not.
The next question, the library is given its permission for parking. Isn't the library everyone's property since we all pay taxes on it? And respectfully, I would say that the county commissioners have provided their signature on that agreement, so the county commissioners have made that determination. Next question, who is going to shoo away the neighborhood kids skateboarding and biking in the parking lot space on weekends? Well,
I don't think you can skateboard on the Oyster Show.
I understand.
Well, this says on the parking lot on the library, I think, is what she means,
Oh, okay.
right? And again, it's become more of an issue as it's become more and more popular, skateboarding, but the town does have an ordinance that you cannot skateboard on the sidewalks and in those public areas, and it's kind of been the police departments, they're chasing kids all the time, every day. So, it's kind of gotten to be a regular thing with the police department. So they will be doing the shooing away.
At the risk of being glib, I read the Berlin Code. It says the chairman of the Board of Zoning Appeals shall be responsible
For shooing them away.
for stopping skateboarders.
But you didn't read the footnote that says he can delegate that authority to the planning director. The next question is, I think, a rhetorical one. Isn't providing a peaceful neighborhood with high quality of time in their home one of the chief responsibilities of the Planning and Zoning Committee? I will say that certainly the board does consider, I think, the potential effect of the use of property in its consideration upon the surrounding neighborhood. Next question, has anyone on the board/committee walked the property to see and understand firsthand the proximity of the inn to the neighbors and the impact it would have on them? I recall one of the questions that I asked last evening was to identify the structures on Mr. and Mrs. Hill's property, and also to explain the person who resides in what used to be the Lynch property, which is directly adjacent to your front yard.
That's correct.
And I did notice again that between your property and the neighboring property on the other side is, of course, the library and its parking area.
Yes.
Has anyone considered how having this restaurant 30 yards from your home, capital your home, impact your life? I guess that's a rhetorical question as well. How does the Planning and Zoning Committee feel after having new neighborhoods, Austin Acres and Brittany Lane, be developed for the purpose of having affordable housing in the neighborhood, letting all those people come in and buy a home, and then let there be a restaurant and wedding venue in their backyard? Those are the written questions that we have, and for the record, I would state that I think it's now appropriate to find out whether anyone has weighed in the other.
Well, I had one more written, and that was from
I'm sorry.
Mrs. Ricks, as I think Mr. Bunning was.
I'm sorry.
And she had emailed me this morning before the 12 noon deadline, also like Mr. Hill did and his wife did.
Okay.
She says, I have a few questions and comments about case number 02-03-21-02, which is the February date, this continuation. since this is not an open meeting and no one will be able to ask questions in real time, which we know is available, and I responded to her email and told her she could be, in real time. I'm wondering, is this going to be a restaurant? So I think we've answered that. It's not it's an approval for a restaurant. Will it be open to the public or just guests of the inn? So again, we know guests of the inn are 10, and we've discussed they had the conditional use for 20 additional for the public. For each event, will they have to apply for a special event permit? Not with the town, but we know they have to go to the Worcester County Fire Marshal. And we have that question again, how many events a year? How many people at the events? And is that including staff also? And what time the events will end? What is the actual zoning on the property? And it's R2 residential. Pardon me.
Could I ask you a question? Her first question was about a restaurant. You said the question's been answered? I don't know that I know the answer.
Since this is not an open meeting and no one will be able to ask questions in real time, I'm wondering, is this going to be a restaurant? The appeal isn't to make it a restaurant. It's not to change the use or to rezone it.
I think what she's saying, is it a restaurant now? Is that what you're saying? It's a restaurant now?
I'm not saying it's a restaurant now. They had a conditional use to have additional guests there to serve dinner to them, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So
But there aren't any
I guess you
restrictions on that, is that correct?
There are what?
There are no restrictions on that the current.
Just the number of guests at any time.
Right, but no date and time specifically restricting them.
And it hasn't to this point been used that way. Even the previous owner and operator, I guess he did a few of these things, but I don't think he ever really, that even changed into where he was doing box lunches and delivering them at one point. But he never really took advantage of that, to my knowledge, of that conditional use he was granted, in 2012.
Well, I think that's where I have a disagreement. You say he was granted, he never requested that. He only requested it to use it the way that you just suggested he's been doing for years. This, to me, looks like an expansion on what he did. And we're not talking about the tents, I'm talking about the use of the building as a restaurant on a daily basis. That was never proposed. And again, it's the same discussion we had earlier, and I know what you said about the opinion, but it wasn't in the minutes that were used to generate that opinion, or at least the motion that I made to generate it.
He did request to my knowledge, and the way the minutes read also, to serve breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
But you don't think that meant to the guests? Because the guests of the bed and breakfast.
And up to
Okay, so
21.
we have to understand this.
Besides the guests in the rooms, is what he asked for.
And how does that?
The issue that I think we're stuck on here is the mention by Mr. Cropper, Mr. Mark Cropper at the time, of a dinner club that would meet several times a month. But then that wasn't the way the motion was made. That's the issue.
Okay.
I don't, he was never asking for a, quote, restaurant, Mr. Kaufman I'm referring to, or Mr. Cropper representing him, Mr. Mark Cropper, not Mr. Hugh Cropper. So that's the sticking point here, is between the minutes as written and the actual findings of fact and the motion that was made. But again, tonight's appeal is a request for a conditional use to operate tented events on the front or rear lawn, not a question of the previous conditional use.
and I guess that's what I'm struggling with. The determination that we were asked to do tonight was with regard to this conditional use request, but I hear Mr. Bunning say that you believe that the findings of fact that were previously made, which would normally have resolved the issue, were not resolved?
Again, when I made my motion back in 7 years ago, it was based on the testimony that was presented
Right.
about this being for invited guests several times a month. But what I'm hearing now, and what I'm hearing from the last meeting we had a month ago, is this is going to be a restaurant with a beer and wine license. It's going to be run that way. We have no commitment over how many days or nights they're going to be open. I mean, I'm looking at this as a restaurant, and it's in a residential area, and that technically isn't allowed in a residential area. I mean, I'm agreeing with what was mentioned 7 years ago, that this should be a rezoning and not a conditional use. We're expanding upon that, and I'm concerned that the expansion of that use now for even more functions makes it even more of a commercial use, which was not my intent when I made the motion 7 years ago.
Okay.
I mean, I'm trying to explain it.
And look, I don't want to be argumentative, I've been really patient, but, you know, it was 9 years ago. It's an opinion that is it is an opinion of this board that is the record of this town. These folks bought this property and paid a lot of money for it based upon, in no small part, of this opinion. The property has a kitchen in it to serve the guests. They spent a lot of money on renovation, in no small part in reliance on this opinion. This opinion from 2012 is the record of the town. You can't go back and look at a deed respectfully from 9 years ago, a recorded deed, and said, that's not what we meant. You can't look at a recorded survey from 9 years ago. I feel like these property owners are getting penalized, and they've come into this in good faith and taken an older, rundown piece of property and spent a load of money on it, and a lot of sweat and hard work, and scrubbing and painting and cleaning and fixing. And, by the way, they're not, you're labeling them as a restaurant, their website's for a B&B. She wants to do a B&B, but we don't want to waive, I'm not being coy with you, but we don't want to waive any rights to do what the opinion gives us.
It's already a B&B, is it not?
I think it is what is in this opinion. And
Well,
we're not here, we didn't pay money to come here to get this interpreted, we just want our tenants, you decide.
Let me try and
If I can finish, I don't think
I'm
it's
sorry.
fair, Mr. Bunning, and you and I have known each other a long time. I don't think it's fair to say, I don't like the tent because I don't like the interpretation of this. I don't think that's fair to us because, hey, we weren't here in 2012. We bought a piece of property and this is what it came with, just like a deed restriction that's recorded in the land records.
I mean, I know what you're saying here, and it's not that I'm saying I don't like the tent. I don't like the expansion of the commercial use in, and you will agree, this is a residential lot.
It's an R2 zone. You have lots of quasi-commercial, as you know, quasi-commercial
I mean, that's
uses.
just my opinion, that's
I understand.
well, and let me at the risk of being in error, make a ruling as the chair that the reason that I asked David to read the findings of fact that are the official record of the action of the board, Mr. Cropper has quoted, and again, while I hear you, Woody, he is exactly right that people have a right to rely on the action of any zoning authority that is reflected in the official findings of fact. It is correct that if a person cannot rely on the findings of fact, and even if they are in error, we didn't correct them. but they have a right to rely on the record. They can't come to us, they shouldn't come to us, and they're not required to come to us to go behind what the records are. So I, at the risk of being in error, I will state that Mr. Cropper is correct. The issue before the board tonight is what is the request for the outdoor venues, and if anyone who is an authorized person can certainly take whatever action they want about the determination of the chair, but I legally, Mr. Cropper is correct. They have a right to rely on the findings of fact.
Okay, I respect your opinion.
Okay. All right. Now, I think we're back, perhaps, to any additional public comments that are being received or have been received.
Ivy Wells said she'd read them for, because this keeps stalling on 4 or 5 comments, and I already see that there's 15 up there, so, thank you.
Hi, I'm Ivy Wells, Director of Economic and Community Development for the town of Berlin. Do you want me to read every single comment that is listed under Facebook just to be fair?
If it's
There's not that many.
germane to this hearing, if it's pertinent, right, to the hearing.
I'll just read them all. They're not that many, and this way people feel heard also. Bonnie Lauer, to expect her to be present at every event, I think, is not reasonable. People get sick, family emergencies occur. A Berger statement, she made a correction. A better statement would be, intention is to be always present, but a capable substitute would be identified in the event she cannot. Megan Hines, a comment in support, I am excited to see this B&B open up. Joe Hill, Mrs. Tomasello stated her daughter-in-law would be doing the daily running of the 10-room inn. Joe Hill, it's my understanding members of the BOA, the planning official, and Mr. Tomasello walked the property. I have to say, not including me, the adjacent property owner, is ethically questionable. Joe Hill, Mr. Tomasello stated this is not going to be every day or every week, maybe once a month or every other month in the summer, not in the winter. Marie Vallon, as of now, is the key here. Joe Hill, in the minutes from the last meeting, Chairman Moore stated 70 seats inside and as many as you want outside. Define as many as you want. Let me know when you want me to pause.
Well, I don't believe, would you read that again?
Certainly. In the minutes from the last meeting, Chairman Moore stated 70 seats inside and as many as you want outside. Define as many as you want.
So I think that's been clarified in tonight's discussions as to how many seats.
I don't think that's in the
Okay.
minutes either.
I think he's referring to the discussion we had last time about the liquor license, and maybe we would say 70.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And that's not even applicable right now.
Well, in the context of that, I will state for the record, as Mr. Cropper said, you cannot have in Worcester County a beer, wine, and liquor license in a Class B establishment unless you serve over 50% food and have over 70 seats in a restaurant. So that was the context of that. That's been clarified. They don't have 70 seats. That's why they're going to request a beer and wine license. I didn't understand where that was coming from. I do now.
Okay, I'll continue if
Yeah,
that's okay.
That's how the minutes read. He is reading the minutes there. Sorry.
Marie Vallon, all good questions. Marie Vallon, Woody is right. Malia Zane Ricks, so it will be open to the public as a restaurant? Question. Cindy Davis, how does the inn get to use the public library for parking? Is there a payment to the library?
I don't know the answer to that. There was no payment. It was just you requested it and received permission in writing from the
Correct.
from the county commissioners and the county administrator. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
My daughter volunteers at the library.
Joe Hill, Mrs. Tomasello stated her daughter-in-law would be doing the daily running of the 10-room inn, stated 3 times here, it looks like. Mr. Tomasello stated this is not going to be every day or every week, maybe once a month or every other month in the summer, not in the winter. Yeah, some of these are repetitive, and I think that
Actually, would
is,
someone clarify, it is only a 5-room inn,
It's
right?
private.
that's all.
We keep hearing 10, I just want to make sure that's not being accepted as
5
Okay.
guest rooms.
And there is one more question from Marie Belong. What about the citizens that it affects?
I beg pardon?
Marie Belong asked a question that just popped up. What about the citizens that it affects?
What about the citizens that affect?
People parking there with the library for all Berlin businesses after library hours. You
Yes.
see that?
No, I don't.
All right, there.
Oh, wait, from Lori Park.
Yes.
Is the parking available at the library for all Berlin businesses after library hours? Yes. I can answer that, yes. I keep hitting refresh just to see.
Yeah, I hit refresh and I don't get refresh. I don't get new ones.
While they're looking, I do want to point out, though, that the inn must carry commercial liability insurance, $1 million, $2 million in the aggregate, $500,000. We must name them as an additional insured. They get to inspect, we indemnify them with a fairly comprehensive indemnification, and they can terminate on 7 days' notice. So, I mean, the county is having its rights
You're
protected.
referring to the agreement between the
The
county
agreement with the county.
with
Correct.
parking at the library.
Correct.
There's another question from Joe Hill. If a conditional use is not utilized for a period or 12 months, the conditional use is void.
That's correct. But there's been no lapse in the operation as a bed and breakfast.
I'll refresh it again, just to see.
And
That's it.
are there any other?
No other
Comments?
questions or comments? I'll refresh it one more time just to be sure.
Okay.
Nope, that's it.
All right.
And I did, as far as I did ask Mrs. Wells to attend tonight as the Economic Development Coordinator, and she's responsible for so much of our Berlin marketing and tourism, because I wanted her to have a little, a comment in the comment period. So if you think that, she's a resident of Berlin, so that's another public comment, I guess, instead of staff comment.
Okay.
Oh, I'm up.
You all right?
I just wanted to voice my support for this project. Several years ago, we did a survey and what was needed in town, and one of the top answers was a wedding venue. We needed another wedding venue in town. I can't remember what it's called on Route 113, the Mary Sherwood Inn just recently opened. I've been to Cello's before. They ran a great restaurant over in West Ocean City. I'm just looking forward to everything that they have to offer the town here. There isn't a place for a private event. There's the hotel. There's the Sterling Tavern, but they have an upstairs, so it's not ADA accessible. Same thing with Boxcar on Main, is not ADA accessible. This is another ADA accessible venue for people to be able to use for weddings, parties, anniversaries, bar mitzvahs, anything that you like, and something like that is needed in town. The economic impact of this, people come to town, they stay for an event, they shop, they dine, and it definitely has an effect on the vitality of the town.
Okay. Any questions as well?
Thank you.
Mr. Cropper, would you
Sure.
like to speak?
Yes, thanks for your patience. I know it's been a long hearing. And look, we think this use is consistent with the neighborhood. It is consistent with the town. We think it complements the neighborhood. We think there's nothing about this proposed use, which is a conditional use, that has a disproportionate negative impact at this location, right? In fact, I think the opposite is true. This isn't like putting it in the opposite is true because it is adjacent to the county library, and we have the parking situation. We have the library. I see this as more of a transit from a planning perspective, more of a transition from the fire company, the library, to the residential area. So not only is there a disproportionate negative impact, but it's a good location because we have the parking there that the county has seen fit because of the insurance requirements, the $2 million worth of insurance, the indemnity requirements that these folks are able to meet. The inn does have 5 rooms, and thank you for that, Mr. Bunning. And it does have some prior approvals, but this is really something needed in Berlin. Maya Tomasello and her family have worked really hard to make this work. They're going to be good neighbors. They live there. They are good neighbors. We propose to, in addition to the other conditions of approval, we propose to limit it, and you may think it should be more, you may think it should be less. We would like to limit it to 20 events a year. That's less than 2 per month. Remember, not all events are going to be 60 people at a wedding. Some may be 10 or 15. Again, if you look at the website that Maya wrote without my prompting, I just went and looked at it. They are looking for small, intimate family events, a retreat for a family to come and enjoy Berlin for the weekend. This is a really nice old building that needs to be utilized. It needs to be utilized by the public. It is a historic building. It's been there for well over 200 years. They've saved it. They have literally saved it. You can go on the website and look at some of the old pictures they have from it, both older and then before 2010. This building has literally been saved, and it should be enjoyed by the public on a quasi-commercial, and this is, I don't see this as a commercial use, a quasi-commercial, low-impact nature, which is what this is about. So we appreciate your consideration. We think it's good for the town. She lives there. They put a big stake in this, and hopefully the little bit of added oomph that the special events will allow them to sustain this use and keep the place in first-class shape like it is now. They're young, and hopefully they'll have a long history at that property and of cooperation with the neighbors, and it'd be good for Berlin.
Mr. Moore.
I'm
I have one more comment I'll read. I know we could go on all night.
And I'll, for the record, I'll object to that because you have closed the evidence. But
Your objection
That's
is
what
noted.
I-
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I thought it was closed.
Okay. So yay or nay?
Beg pardon? Yes,
Do
go
I
ahead.
read this comment or not?
Yeah. I noted his objection.
Okay. This is from Lori Park, and she says, as a resident of Brittany Lane, the street behind the library, which is adjacent to the library, I'm strongly against the B&B being used as a wedding venue due to the noise factor of people drinking and outside music in a quiet, well, she says quiet, but in a quiet residential neighborhood.
Okay.
Thanks, Adam.
All right. Let me, and Mr. Cropper stated it, and I'm going to state it perhaps a little bit differently. I think, for the record, I also represent folks in zoning cases. As a conditional use request, it is our board's obligation to make a determination, not whether or not the use may be detrimental upon surrounding property, because the cases actually say that the law presumes that there will be some detrimental effect on a conditional use. Otherwise, it would be a permitted use. So what the law says, and Mr. Cropper stated it, that it is our obligation to find a uniquely detrimental effect upon this use in its particular location as opposed to a similar use in any other R2 zone in Berlin. Now, that's our obligation. Otherwise, it is presumed that the conditional use request must be granted unless there is a, quote, uniquely detrimental effect based upon the particular characteristics of the neighborhood. I don't need to repeat what Mr. Cropper has said, but unless that occurs, there can be an erroneous decision of the board. So we have to make that finding. And the other thing that I wanted to say is that my determination 9 years ago or whatever has nothing to do with where we are tonight. Mr. Bunning said it was prophetic, but we decided what we decided. Ivy, did you say that Mary Sherwood was reopened now?
It was, but I think it's still closed due to COVID, but
Okay.
they had reopened the year before last.
Okay. I, and maybe many of us, have enjoyed events at Mary Sherwood, which of course is not within the town. I don't know of any other location in town where the potential for wedding venues would be as amenable as this one. I was struck yesterday when I was there. I've been there many times when Fred Bruckman lived there. I've known him all my life. He's long since deceased. The front yard is deeper and more roomy than any other place that I know of in Berlin. The rear yard is bordered by county property. It's bordered on one side by the library. And my feeling in visiting the property is, as Mr. Cropper said, based on the reliance, and I'm not saying that we cannot make the determination as to the outdoor events, because that's why we're here. If you all feel that they are uniquely detrimental at this location, then you can vote that way. My suggestion, and I do not know whether this is even acceptable or considerable by the applicant, but my notion would be that if the board finds that this is a uniquely detrimental location, then you can vote against the conditional use. If you do not make that finding and would still like to consider, my potential suggestion would be to have the determination reviewed in a period of time, say 2 years, to determine whether or not the conditions that Mr. Cropper has put out there can be revisited to see whether those conditions have been upheld. And if they have, then the board would simply, as an agenda item, say we don't need to revisit the issue. If those conditions were violated, then we could revisit the issue. But in my opinion, Mr. Cropper has made the point that this is a uniquely non-detrimental property because of its location adjacent to the library, and more importantly, the availability of significant parking. I know of no other place in the town where a venue of this could be held with that kind of parking in a residential area. So, if we made an error 9 years ago with regard to the findings of fact, that is not the error that can be imposed upon the applicant, that's our error. And people have a right to rely on the official records of the town. So with that, I'll accept certainly any comments from the board and a motion if that's where we are.
I think it would be important in their motion to include the limit that they have proposed in the amount of events per year.
Do you have an idea of what the limit should be? 20 events a year, if they're all during the summer, you're not limiting it to certain months. He said 2 a month.
No, he said
That would be
20 per
limited.
year.
20, yeah, 20 per year.
You know,
There's a big difference in how that's applied. How many of these events would occur during the fall, winter months anyway? They would 20 in the summer be, would be too many, would that be too many?
I don't think we could live with that.
But see, that's like, in other words, every week.
What, I mean, living back there behind the place, I've thought about this a lot. And I think from our initial meeting, I saw respect from Tomasello's in making certain adjustments to accommodate the surrounding residential community. I like the thought of bringing up the standing exceptional use for this property, because I think that a lot of the concern from surrounding citizens is possibly the use of it being as a restaurant. And I know that you have stated it wouldn't be. The approval of the exceptional use back in 2012, 2011, didn't specify a given date or time, not allowing people. So you could almost view it and use it as a restaurant if you would like to, noting the capacity of people that aren't staying at the inn. So looking at what you propose here with the limiting of amplification, time, people, I think they're all very good proposals. I think that fits in a little better with the surrounding community than the original proposal. But my proposal to the rest of the committee, the board members here, if applicable, could we approve this by amending the original exceptional use, making that an agreement of some kind?
To change the original determination in what way?
Well, the discussion in that meeting was trying to label it exactly as a bed and breakfast. From a business standpoint, I know you guys want to make money off of both your residents staying there and people coming in and dining. The concerns from the surrounding neighborhood is this going to be a restaurant where it's going to be filled with people every night, in and out? So Woody brought up concern about it, possibly being a restaurant. Is there something we want to amend there that kind of appeases the surrounding residents and rests their minds about this actually being and utilized as a restaurant? And then adding on top of it another exceptional use for this outdoor event.
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I know how to answer that because
I would like to comment on that, please.
Just wait a minute.
well,
So-
hold on,
Okay,
Peanut,
just
hold
wait.
on.
I think you're out of order.
I
I have to,
wait, please. I have not closed the hearing. We're in debate. Does anyone have any objection if I swear Mr. Tomasello in? Look, I want to, and Mr. Cropper, that's up to you. I want to be as fair as I can, hopefully to all concerned.
go ahead.
I-
Okay. Okay, you can swear him in if you open it.
I beg your pardon?
You can swear him in if you want to.
Okay. If you'll raise your right hand, please.
And I guess and let me just say in his defense, we have had a lot of Facebook comments and other comments, and he wants to speak.
I understand.
And I shall let him speak.
I understand, and you have the right of rebuttal, so.
Yeah.
Yes, I just
All right.
wanted to.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. Okay. You raised your right hand for the record. You do solemnly declare and affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth.
Yes, sir.
And state your name, please.
Giovanni Pino Tomasello.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I just want to share with the board that when I was approached by Lucy, the previous owner, before I made agreement on buying the property, I came in and see Dave. I wanted to know what was available on this property for me to use. And I was told that the founding back in 2012, the property was used for a bed and breakfast, was used for a restaurant. Matter of fact, I don't know if any of you have been inside, but this guy, they put it $400,000 with a commercial kitchen. They wouldn't have put that kind of money in the kitchen if it was only for bed and breakfast. So, but to me, I've been in Ocean City for 40 years. I have never had any issue with neighbors or law with anybody, and certainly I don't want to create a problem with the neighbors. But I bought this property with that intention that what was given to me in writing, right, Dave?
Yes, sir.
And we spent, besides the purchase, but making the property beautiful, over $150,000 on improvement. And I disagree with Ms. Apple to remove what the finding was given 12 years ago. Because I will walk away and I will sell that property tomorrow morning. Thank you.
Any questions of Mr. Tomasello?
Yeah, I'm not proposing to take that away from you. What I'm proposing is to keep it at this minimum and tie these two exceptions together. So in the initial meeting was with the liquor license, getting the amount of seats possible in the building in order to accommodate a liquor license. You've taken away the liquor license, now you got beer and wine. So that's brought down your maximum capacity of people allowed. So by approving this, is there a way to tie the first exception and this together as an amendment, so that if they wanted to come back and expand upon the amount of seating again, it would have to take into account both the outdoor seating or the outdoor events that we're about to do, along with the indoor bed and breakfast and food prep restaurant?
The answer to that is yes. Where I'm coming from, just so everybody understands, the record reflects that our findings of fact were the basis, as Mr. Cropper said, and Mr. Tomasello said, for them buying the property. If your question is, can we say that the indoor capacity shall remain at 30 persons, that the outdoor events will not exceed 60 persons, and that there will be no expansion of the proposed conditions of approval? The answer to that is absolutely yes. I mean, because they've offered these conditions as our approval. Where I'm trying to get the board from what I believe would be an error is simply, A, revisiting the issue which the record that people are entitled to rely on is clear. And number two, I invite certainly any discussion as to whether or not this property, and this is really the salient question, whether or not this property with this use at this location is uniquely detrimental, other than the effect that a similar conditional use would have on any other R2 property. That's our obligation, that's the legal obligation we've got. And I hear the applicants say that they are willing for these conditions. Are you comfortable with these conditions?
I like these conditions, and then I have a couple other proposals to tie into them.
Okay.
For the surrounding community as well, a detriment to the surrounding community. I think the initial application you guys put in would have been a detriment to the surrounding community. You know, giving it a blanket of approval to come in with 100 people, no restrictions on amplified music, no restrictions on time, it could have been. This approval also, I believe there are some similar properties in town. On the other side of Brittany Lane, there is a large estate between Brittany Lane and the Atkins Company. There's a very large house.
That's
It's
a
very
Harrison property.
deep property.
Right.
There are numerous large homes with deep yards down Broad Street as you head west towards Liberty. There are more on Main Street, but I'm guessing a lot of those older ones are in the historically zoned part of town. So that's
They
kind
are.
of exempt.
They are.
So this approval then opens up a precedent for others to possibly do the same.
Well,
Well,
any bed and breakfast is a conditional use. So anybody want, on any of these properties you're referring to, they would come before you for a conditional use to operate a bed and breakfast,
Right.
as the code reads. As Mr. Kaufman did back in 2010, and then later got different conditions, granted to them. So that would, they would be, anybody who had one of these other properties would be entitled to the same process.
Right.
right. And John, let me say, and I don't know whether you and I think we may be saying the same thing. The issue is not whether or not there are other properties that would be equally beneficial or non-harm. And of course, I know Wendy Brow with the Harrison property. The issue is whether this property is uniquely detrimental. In other words, it is different in a detrimental effect than those other properties that you notice. That's our required standard. We have to find that this one at this location has a detrimental effect different and more significant than those other properties.
And where I'm going with it as well is, in the previous meeting, David stated that the approval of this carries with the property, not the owner.
That's correct.
So.
It is the right of a property owner, as has been testified. They relied on our decision back in 2012 in considering the purchaser.
So there's been, you yourself had commended the Tomasellos on their business ventures to the state. We know they're outstanding business people.
Right.
Something happens, the property goes up for sale, Joe Blow from California comes in, buys the property, and kind of expands the seafood more. So by keeping it to the exceptional point that I was making with the other properties, you can look at it as a detriment as well. But is there a way to make this approval and attach that to the property? So then if the property changes hands, then this would all have to be brought back before the board again.
No. In my judgment, I think I'm right. I don't think you can tie a conditional use to a single owner.
That's just a statement of the law.
Right.
So that wouldn't be in with the conditional approval of this
No,
application.
the conditions are the conditions that this property owner at this time is willing to impose upon that property. Any purchaser would have to comply with those conditions. But Hugh's right. As a matter of law, you can't say, well, we like the way Mr. Tomasello operated, but we don't like the way Joe Moore does when he buys from Mr. Tomasello.
That's very subjective, right? I get that.
Yeah, that's not allowed. But the The conditions, I hear you, they have offered them, and if there are any additional conditions which are reasonable, then certainly you all can consider those, but that would not be one that it's Mr. Tomasello's privilege alone.
So if they sell the property, the new owner coming in will just take over as it was,
With the same conditions.
the same condition?
Yes, sir. Any further? If there are no further comments or questions, if there is a motion, I'll entertain a motion.
Well, I would move that we approve the request, and including in that approval would be the conditions that the owner has offered.
Which are the proposed conditions of approval which we have, which I believe, Mr. Cropper, is Exhibit 1.
Correct, and you can add a limit of 20 events per year to that
Okay.
in your handwriting.
Would number of events per month in your applicant's business dealings, what would be, I guess, the least amount you would have in order that would be cost beneficial for you
The least,
Per
the
month.
least amount of events per month?
per month?
I mean, I would guess that that would depend on the event and the size of the event. Considering this is up to 60 people, we could have an event for 30 people that would cost differently than for an event for 60 people. That also includes, if it's an event that includes photography, catering, music, all of those are additional costs that change the price. So there really isn't a way to answer that question.
I think it's going to be, you go by the Assateague Brewery on 6/11, my gosh, they've been outside events in January, February.
There's heaters, there's tents, again, we're
And
asking
with
for
COVID,
tents.
people want to be outside, so I don't see this all happening in July and
I
August.
don't either.
Would we be able to say, instead of having back-to-back events, say you did it for a full weekend, Saturday and a Sunday, would you be open to one event a week? So 20 events per year, one event a week.
That's fine,
So it's not back-to-back events.
that's
So-
fine.
That's tough, if she says, okay, it's her gig, but I know we had events in our yard, and we had a tent, we had a wedding one night, we had something else the next night.
Yeah, I mean,
while was there.
I don't think it's great, but if that's what it's gonna take, that's
Yeah,
what it's gonna
and
take.
I get the wedding thing, like I want to own a property one day where my kids get married at. That's my property. This is a business, and it will be.
It's also our home.
Yep, it will be year-round though, and it's for profit with the residential area which I live in and my surrounding neighbors. I think you guys are being respectful here, but at the same time, they are large events and surrounding neighbors still have their concerns about it.
I understand that, and I hear you. I do think that, between now and the hearing 2 months ago, we've reduced our numbers, we've come up with conditions for approval. We've tried to, make everything work for everyone. We want to be good neighbors, good townspeople, and that's why, we're laying it out in this way.
Would you guys be open to the 20 events a year, one event a month? Or one event a month?
One event a week. Did I hear a response to that question?
I mean, I'm not happy about it, because obviously when you have a wedding, there's a rehearsal dinner, hopefully. There's the actual wedding, and then some people do like to do a Sunday brunch. And again, those numbers vary. For a rehearsal dinner, you could have just the immediate family there. You could have, for the brunch, again, just immediate family or family that's from out of town.
Yeah.
It's hard to give a blanket statement when it's hard to give a
And
blanket
this tent
statement.
company is expensive, they're professional and they're
Yes.
expensive, they've been to my house 3 or 4 times. They're professional, expensive, and they usually set up the tent on a Friday and then
And
break
they
it
have
down
a
on a
great track
Sunday.
record.
Well, may I make a suggestion, see whether it sticks? Not more than one unrelated event per week.
That's
Because I
better.
hear you on the rehearsal dinner
Right.
and the wedding and
It's all
that.
tied together,
But you would not use your tent for more than one
unrelated.
related event per week. Is that
I like that, I like that.
That's
not more than one unrelated
That's
event?
better.
That's a
Yep.
good point.
So it's not like a wedding back-to-back.
Right.
We'll have
Right.
the party outside on a Saturday night, then a Sunday night.
Right.
Right. All right. So with that amendment, we have a motion by Doug. Is there a second?
I second the motion to approve this, do I have to go through the whole thing, or can I just say second?
Okay.
We'll take second.
It has been moved and articulated by second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. The vote is 3-1.
Thank you.
Yes, with Mr. Bunning in opposition. Okay, thank you, folks, and let me say to the folks who came by the internet or whatever, we thank your patience and your attendance. Hopefully, before too long, we will be able to resume live attendance at hearings. And with that, if there is no further business, I'll declare the meeting adjourned.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm hungry.
No, it's a forum of those that are, yeah, in other words, we've got a forum, we would have. Yours too.
Yeah.
We would have to have. And likewise, with coworkers, we would have to have 3. Yeah, that's true too. But if we're in